It is recording, so go ahead.
Okay, I'll bang my gavel virtually and welcome you all to the Worcester Township Board of Supervisors reorganization meeting for January 4th, 2021. If you'd all please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the
flag of the United States of America and to the Republic for one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
So good evening, folks. My name is Rick DeLello. I am the chairman of the board. With me tonight, we have Lou Betts and Steve Quigley, our vice chair and third member. We have Tommy Ryan, who's our township manager. We have Stacy Crandell, who is our assistant township manager. And we have Bob Brandt, who is our township solicitor. I think in the audience, you've all been through a reorganization meeting before, but let me just say a couple of things and then I'll ask the board if there are any informational items. But invariably, our reorganization meeting is a lot of procedural items that we need to, each annum, we need to get together based on being a second class township. There's very specific rules. We go through a process of appointments and reappointments and really sort of all of the mechanics so that as we go into our new year as a board, we cross all the T's and dot all the I's. There's a lot of motions, there's a lot of seconds. Certainly, as you know, on any time we have a voting item, we have to ask for public comment, so we will. But invariably, a lot of these items are just sort of procedural things that we need to take care of on an annual basis. And we will hopefully, this is the first time we're doing it at night. Normally this is an 11 a.m. on the first Monday after the start of the new year, and we do it, but it had been suggested to do it at night this year. So we're gonna give that a whirl and see how that plays out. In terms of the rest of the board, does anybody else have any informational items for the board tonight?
No, sir.
No, sir.
This meeting is being recorded for rebroadcast.
Thank you, Tommy. Okay, so the first item on our agenda, as is with all our meetings, is public comment. And if anybody has any public comment, this would be the time for participation. Invariably, how this will work is if you want to go into the chat session and let Stacy know that you have a public comment, we can unmute you so that you can speak and make your comment, and then we can proceed forward.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh my God, where could it go? Into the creek.
Seeing anything, Stacy?
Nope.
Okay. So if you could just sort of keep the audience muted then until with each item, if we need to unmute somebody for public comment, we will do that. So now moving forward, we have official action items, and we got a whole bunch of things, as I said, we need to do procedurally. And the first official action item we have is we need to have a motion for an appointment of a temporary chair.
I will make the motion for temporary chair to be Rick DeLello.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor?
I see none.
Okay. I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item on our agenda is the appointment of a temporary secretary. And we need to make a motion to appoint a temporary secretary.
I'll make a motion to temporary secretary be Tom Ryan.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor?
Seeing none.
Okay, then I will call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Motion passes. Next item on our agenda, this is going to sound almost redundant, but now we need to appoint a chair for the Board of Supervisors for 2021.
I'll make the motion to elect Rick DeLello as the chairman of the Board of Supervisors.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor?
There's none.
Okay, seeing none, then I will call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Motion passes. Next item on our agenda is the appointment of a vice chair for the Board of Supervisors for 2021. I will actually
I'll make the motion.
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
I'll make the motion for Lou Betts, Vice Chairman of the Board of Supervisors for the year 2021.
I will second that. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor?
There is none.
And I will call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So next item on our agenda is what we call official appointments. So Tommy or Bob, I'm not sure. I got a quick question on this one. Tommy, you had in your memo, and I know this was on the website for the audience members to see, listed out what I guess is about 30 official appointments. Can we do those just as one collective motion, or do we need to sort of read out each individual role in the person?
In my opinion, fine. Go ahead. Go ahead, Tommy. I just said a collective motion is fine if you wanted to bundle all the appointments together.
And I agree with that, Rick. I think that's the way to do it.
Okay. So I'm going to ask this two different ways to my other board members. And the first is if there is anybody that wishes to sort of remove any official appointment, and if not, then make a motion to appoint the official appointments as a slate.
What do we do, Rick? Do we make a motion to?
Yeah, so ultimately there's a list of 30 appointments, and if there was one in particular that said I'd like to pull out, as just a hypothetical, you grabbed one item and said, hey, I want to talk about item AA, and we could do that out. But if you're comfortable with the slate, then just how would we word that, Bob? Just a motion to appoint the official positions as documented in the packet.
Exactly.
A motion to make the appointments as presented. Is that okay?
Yes, it is.
I'm fine with the slate as it is.
Okay, so can you second that, Steve?
I will second that.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor?
There is none.
Okay, seeing none, then I will call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. All right, so next up we have a motion for what we would call an elected position vacancy appointment. So invariably we have on the Board of Auditors, we had Mike Herman. He moved, so he had to resign his position because he moved outside of the area. And because that's an elected position, we're taking that out as a separate motion. So in 2021, that'll actually be on the ballot, is that somebody will run and be voted into that role. But in advance of the next municipal election, we need to appoint somebody into that role. And ultimately, there was an individual, Jeffrey Reeder, who volunteered. He was recommended by Mike. He also volunteered. He's a CPA to fulfill that role for a one-year term. So I would ask if somebody would make a motion to appoint Jeffrey Reeder to the Board of Auditors for a one-year term.
Make a motion, Jeffrey Reeder as auditor.
I'll second that.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor?
There is none.
Okay, seeing none, then I will call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. So next up, we have what we're calling item G. For those that are following along, it's volunteer appointments, standing positions. So in essence, what we have is, so Tommy, I'm going to ask you if you could, there's 4 items here in terms of volunteer appointments on standing positions. We have a vacancy board chair, which was Bob Andorn, and he is still interested in serving. There's something called the Uniform Construction Code Regional Board of Appeals, and Ralph Gambone is being nominated for that particular role. Tommy, I'm going to ask you in a minute to kind of give a little additional information on that particular item because it doesn't come up very often. I want to make sure we kind of explain what that role is. And then we have 2 zoning board members, Michael Labor and Bradford Smith, who are both currently on our zoning board. Their terms are up, and they have expressed an interest in continuing for another 3-year term. So they're listed as volunteer appointments. So first, I'm going to ask Tommy to explain the Uniform Construction Code, what that role is, so that folks can understand. And then I'll ask if somebody wants to make a motion for the slate, or if anybody wants to have a discussion or make an alternative motion.
Uniform Construction Code Regional Board of Approvals is a quasi-judicial body similar to the Zoning Hearing Board. But whereas the Zoning Hearing Board grants relief from the Township Zoning Ordinance, this body is empowered to grant relief from the statewide building code. Because there is very limited activity before the board, Worcester Township is a member of a multi-municipal consortium that each member puts up a representative to serve on the board, and it's a circuit rider type operation. When an application is received in one of the municipalities, the gang is called together to conduct a hearing to consider the relief from the statewide building code.
So Tommy, invariably that doesn't necessarily apply to just Worcester. It's just wherever one might pop up occasionally, and I don't recall it in my 3 years. I don't know that it's ever come up in Worcester in my 3 years that we've had a case. Does that sound accurate, or is that not accurate?
In the last 3 years, I don't recall there being a case, but my first year or 2 here, there was one application made for relief for a project at the Wentz Church.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, so does any board member have any questions regarding the slate, or any comments they want to make regarding the slate, or make any adjustments?
Rick, one question to Tommy. Tommy, how many people are on this review board? Is it a certain amount of townships in our area? Is it a 3-member board, 10-member board? What's the number there?
Sure. So we are members with, let's see, Collegeville Borough, Lower Frederick, New Hanover, Perkiomen, Trapp, Skippack, and Schwanksville. So that's 8. So it's an 8-member board, but they gather and they conduct a hearing with 5. So when an application comes in, it's hosted in the subject municipality. The subject municipality appoints the attorney to serve as the solicitor for the group, and then among those 8 member municipalities, 5 people are sent to the hearing.
Okay, the follow-up question to that, Tom, if something happens in Worcester, is Mr. Gambone selected as one of those representatives, or is it an outside board?
Yeah, so the protocol is the representative for the home municipality would be invited to be one of the 5. Now, if there's a conflict and he or she just can't attend, there's no requirement for that person to be there. The other municipal representatives can meet on his or her behalf.
Okay, thank you.
I know Ralph Gambone. He's got a history in the building industry, so if you want a motion, I'd make a motion to Michael Labor, Brad Smith, and Ralph Gambone all be appointed.
And we also need Bob Andorn in that motion as well for vacancy board chair.
I'm sorry, and Bob Andorn also is appointed.
I'll make that motion. I'll second that motion for all 4 candidates.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor?
There is none.
Okay. Seeing none, then I will call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item on our agenda is item H, which is volunteer appointments / ad hoc positions. And more specifically, this is the volunteer appointments for our comprehensive plan update task force. As you guys will all remember, we appointed all of these individuals in January of 2020, and it's an annual appointment, so it's a process of reappointment. The slate that is before us is all of the same individuals that were originally appointed, save for George Marks. He's the one individual that is not being appointed. Ultimately, all these individuals said, yes, I served on it last year. I want to continue to serve on it, and certainly that's the path that I'd like to follow. If anybody wants to make any adjustments, certainly this would be the time to do that. But as the slate is presented before us tonight, these are the individuals that were on it in 2020, and they would be reappointed to continue to serve in 2021.
Do you need to name all these people, Rick, or do we just say, I make a motion to,
I think we just take the comprehensive task force
group?
as presented in the
Okay.
packet, because it is all the same individuals. We're not adding a bunch of new folks into the mix. It's more of a reappointment.
I'll make a motion that we reappoint the comprehensive plan parties involved group.
I was just say as presented in our packet.
As presented.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor?
There is none.
Okay, seeing none, then I will call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, now we get to the fun stuff. So now we have the holiday and meeting schedule.
Wow.
So Tommy, I'm assuming, let me ask the question before I ask for the motion. We're following a consistent holiday schedule as we have in past years. There are no specific changes to that I could see. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Fair enough. Then guys, I actually need a motion to accept the set holiday and meeting. Well, this is also the meeting schedule as well, which is, let me just tack in that the meeting schedule pertains to both the Board of well, it's several items. There's the Board of Auditors 2021 reorganization meeting, and when that's going to be held, there's all of our Board of Supervisors work sessions and business meetings, the Planning Commission, their schedule, the Zoning Hearing Board normally being held, but that's driven off of applications as well. The Comprehensive Plan Update Task Force, and when they held their meetings, and then our reorganization meeting for 2022 for January 3rd, 2022. So what I would need is a motion to set both the holiday schedule and the meeting schedule for our meetings, as well as all the various committees and subcommittees under us.
So I want to make a motion on set the holiday and meeting schedules as presented. Is that okay with that? Or?
That'll work.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment on the motion on the floor?
There is none.
Okay, seeing none, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Motion passes. Moving on. We're now up to J, other establishments. So what we have here is a motion to set township depositories, treasurer and assistant treasurer bond amounts, vehicle reimbursement rate, and the newspaper of record. Tom, the only question I had here is we just sort of referenced the IRS approved rate for, do we need to specifically reference a year or reference an amount there? Is that necessary?
It's unnecessary, but for 2021, it is 56 cents a mile.
Okay. Got it. And then the other items, we're not making any changes to any of our existing township depositories that I could see. Again, just confirm that I'm seeing that correctly.
Correct.
Thank you. And then just for those who are in the audience, we do also go through a process where we bond both the township manager as well as we bond the treasurer and assistant treasurer as well as a measure of security and protection for the township. Thankfully, we've never had to take advantage of, I say take advantage, never had to address that issue with a bond, but obviously that's an important thing that we take care of every year to make sure that the dollars are being protected. And I will entertain a motion if somebody wants to make the motion for item J.
I'll make a motion that we set the township depositories treasurer and assistant treasurer bond amounts, vehicle reimbursement rate, and the newspaper of record.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor?
There is none.
Excellent. Seeing none, then I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, so next up is item K, which is going to be Resolution 2021-01, which is going to be a resolution to authorize certain activities conducted by the Worcester Township Volunteer Fire Department. As I think everybody is aware, there are several. We actually bundled this a few years ago to make it a little bit easier. There's a series of events that the fire department does every year, and as opposed to having them come to us every single time for these repeat events, we established a resolution a few years ago to sort of bundle all of those items into a single resolution so that we could approve it and the fire department could handle all of those items sort of in one resolution. This sort of pertains to when there are fire department picnics, the fire department's annual 5K and annual chicken barbecue. We hope obviously both of those events come back in 2021 in person. The fire department's Lady Craft Show, and seasonal Santa visits and tours, and the provision of traffic control for the Montgomery County annual flu shot program and at community parade. So we have an actual resolution in the packet for that. And if somebody will make a motion to accept that resolution, I would entertain it.
Make a motion to accept Resolution 2021-01, the resolution authorizing certain activities conducted by the Worcester Township Volunteer Fire Department.
I will second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor?
There is none.
Seeing none, then I will call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item on our agenda is Resolution 2021-02, which is a resolution to establish a fee schedule. Tommy, I'm going to ask you, like I do every year, if you could just take a minute to sort of give some backdrop on sort of our philosophy for the fee schedule and ultimately if there's anything specifically unique this year versus past years, if you could comment on that.
Sure. The township is able to set fees for certain permitting activities, building, zoning, land development, and so forth. The law on this is clear. We cannot use the fees to generate revenue above our expenses relative to the services provided. To the extent that we recapture our actual costs, that's up to the board. But we can't go beyond our estimated actual expenses. If we do anything less, it's subsidized by the general public. And that's an important distinction because if a person wants to build a swimming pool in the township, to the extent he or she is not paying for the services relative to the permit fee, everybody else in the township who can't swim in the swimming pool picks up the check. So each year, the township estimates our actual estimated costs to provide the services. And in past years, the board's approach here is to set a fee that recaptures 95% of our estimated expenses. We do realize that there is some public value to building done properly. Property values are supported. Things don't fall down as often, which means our volunteer fire department and the police and the ambulance aren't needed as often. So we attribute that approximately 5% of value to the township. So each year, after we do the number crunch, we adjust the fees accordingly to recapture approximately 95% of our estimated expenses. And when approached this way, the expenses over time will adjust a little bit up to offset the increased cost of providing these services. With regards to anything new this year, only one thing of note, a recent FCC ruling set presumptive ceilings on certain fees that we can charge for distributed antenna systems, the so-called small wireless facilities. So that has to be treated a little differently, and it's included in the fee schedule as such.
Thank you, Tommy. Do either board members have any questions regarding the fee schedule in general or any specific comments they want to make regarding the fee schedule?
No, sir.
I don't know.
Okay. And I will entertain a motion
I'll
for,
make a motion.
yeah, go ahead, Lou.
Resolution 2021-02, to establish the fee schedule as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor?
I am seeing none.
Okay, seeing none, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, next item on our agenda is item M, which is Resolution 2021-03. That's a resolution to appoint the township auditor. And just as a point of clarification, earlier we appointed somebody as a volunteer. This is actually the appointment of the firm, the CPA firm that assists us with performing the audit this each year. And the resolution tonight is for an appointment of B. Bergvall and Company, which is the firm we've had for the last several years to perform the audit, which certainly is acceptable to me. In terms of other board members, first, is there anybody who has any questions regarding that firm or their appointment? And if not, I will entertain a motion if somebody wants to make one.
I'll make a resolution 2021-03, to appoint the township auditor as the firm presented. I forget the name. It's not in front of me.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded, and the firm name is B. Bergvall and Company.
Bergvall.
Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor?
There is none.
Okay, seeing none, then I will call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Okay, so next item on our agenda, Tommy, I'm going to ask you to make just a couple of quick comments on this one as well, just so we articulate it correctly. But it's a resolution. It's Resolution 2021-04, which is a resolution to establish the township manager salary for 2021 and to approve the township manager employment agreement. And invariably, there, other than a very, very modest salary adjustment, there's not any change that's being made to the agreements, but I know there's a specific, we need to sort of re-establish that every couple of years or under certain conditions, correct?
That's correct. The second-class township code requires a manager's salary to be adopted by the board by resolution. With regards to the contract, a township manager's contract cannot extend past the reorganization meeting following a municipal election. We're not at that meeting this year. We will be next year, but we normally do the appointment agreement on an annual basis along with the salary adjustment.
Thank you, Tommy. Go ahead.
Need a motion, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, I do need a motion, but also if anybody wants to make any specific comments or not, I was just going to say that certainly I think I know that I've been extremely pleased with Tommy and his role as our township manager, and I think the very, very modest increase that's sort of baked into his contract is absolutely in the township's favor. So I'm always supportive of continuing to renew and reappoint under that particular agreement.
I agree, Rick. He does a wonderful job. I'll make a resolution 2021-04 to establish the township manager's salary for the 2021 and approve the township manager employment agreement as presented.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor?
There is none.
Okay, seeing none, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. So the next item on our agenda is Resolution 2021-5. And that's a resolution to authorize the destruction of certain public records in accordance with Act 428 of 1968 and the Municipal Records Manual. And Tommy, again, I'm going to ask you, some people hear destruction of public records and they get a little bit concerned. So if you could perhaps just sort of give us the 100-foot view of ultimately what we're actually doing when we're following the plan for record destruction.
State law allows municipal governments to destroy certain records after a certain period of time. What is required in order to destroy a public record is the adoption of a resolution of the intent to follow the state regulations. And then whenever you decide that it is time to get rid of documents that you no longer need, to do so by a resolution adopted by the Board of Supervisors. It is a most common approval at local government. There are volumes of paper, small mountain ranges of paper that we accumulate over time that we no longer need. And the state tells us how long we have to hold on to those documents. And after that time, if they're of no value to us, with the proper approval, we can go about destroying those documents.
Thank you, Tommy. And just to sort of clarify, if as a hypothetical scenario, if there was some record that was part of a legal proceeding of some sort, and we obviously don't ever destroy records of that nature, and there's certain conditions like that we're not going into property files and destroying records from property files and things in that nature. This is more getting rid of some of the items that are no longer needed or necessary within the township, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Does any board member have any question regarding this particular resolution?
No, sir.
Okay, then I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion for Resolution 2021-05 to authorize the destruction of certain public records in accordance with the Act of 428 of 1968 and the Municipal Records Manual.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor?
There is none.
Okay, seeing none, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item on our agenda is Resolution 2021-06, which is going to be a resolution to establish emergency service response areas. So for folks who are not aware, we actually have three, is it three or is it four, Tommy? Different emergency management companies that serve Worcester Township.
Yeah, we have six. So you have the
Six.
volunteer fire department, the state police, and then 4 ambulance companies.
Gotcha. So, and each year we need to, again, this is one of those annual, we need to each year establish those officially as part of our annual resolution, correct?
Yes.
So first
Rick,
of all, go
go
ahead.
Yeah, I think it's important to let the public know that this past year, Tommy entered into negotiations with all the ambulance companies to try to work the best deal out for all the residents in the township, so they get, I guess, quick service, the best service we can give to the people, which is important. It's something the board hasn't done for a number of years, but Tommy did the negotiations this year, interviewing all the people and bringing it back to the board, which it was a job well done. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, and just a note, I thank you for that, but the real work was done by Andrew Arquette, our codes director, who worked with the ambulance companies, and Andrew was the one that sat down and determined the district boundaries that were needed so that every resident was as close to an ambulance station as possible. So Andrew deserves all the credit on that front.
Yeah, well, it's a job well done. I think Andrew, being at the fire scene, seeing the needs for these people to be there on a quick basis, in these emergency calls with these accidents, it's important. So once again, relay to Andrew our thanks for his effort in this matter to try to get the best service to the people of Worcester.
Steve,
have a
thanks for
question.
bringing that up. Go ahead, Lou.
I have a question, Tommy. When someone calls 911, does the county, obviously they have a map in front of them, so they know which Plymouth ambulance or whoever to go to their location. So did Andrew kind of coordinate with them as far as like, because certain bridges are out or certain roads that are, you know?
So the district that we're adopting tonight will be shared with 911. There are no changes to the boundaries this year compared to the ones we adopted last year. But in answer to the question, if a road is out, is a bridge out? Yes. Andrew is our point person. He will contact 911 to make them aware of a road closure, and the 911 folks will route ambulances accordingly.
And just to make mention that there was one incident in the past, and I remember this, the Creeble Mill Road Bridge that was out, and the ambulance went one way and couldn't go through, so, you know, that's important from my perspective. If you're on the wrong side of the bridge and it's out, and an ambulance is on the way, it's important. So, I'll make a resolution 2021-06 to establish emergency response areas as presented.
And I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor?
There is none.
Okay, seeing none, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item on our agenda is Resolution 2021-07, which is going to be a resolution to amend the Worcester Township Personnel Manual. So, Tommy, I know there were a couple of items that were being changed. Maybe you could just sort of highlight at a very high level, just sort of what minor adjustments we're making into the manual and why we, you know, obviously we need to codify that through a resolution.
Sure. Each reorganization meeting, we consider revisions to the personnel manual. This year, we're proposing 13 revisions. Of the 13, 11 I would classify as clerical or fixing typographical errors. The two substantive revisions, number one, approval to increase the number of days an employee can place in reserve, PTO days, personal time off days, paid time off days, into a bank of days that can be used to supplement income during terms of long-term disability, short-term disabilities, or Family Medical Leave Act type leave. Currently, we allow employees to take their paid time off days and place unused paid time off days in a bank up to 10 days. We're asking for the board approval to go up to 15 days, and one of the reasons we're looking at this, quite frankly, is our experience this past year with the pandemic and understanding that folks need some time off if they test positive for COVID, or if a loved one, or if a child's school is shut down. This provides the employee with the option of placing into a bank some days that can be used for this type of leave moving forward. The second revision is to exempt the first 8 hours of paid time off with regards to a calculation for overtime. In a nutshell, right now we have two classifications of overtime, scheduled overtime and unscheduled overtime. Scheduled overtime is overtime for hours worked at, let's say, a meeting that has been scheduled in advance, a community event like Worcester Community Day that has been scheduled in advance. If you work during those events and you take time off during the week, this amendment would say that for the first 8 hours of overtime, you can be paid at the overtime rate. However, if you take off more than 1 day during that week, any hours over 8 hours of overtime are not paid at the overtime rate. So, for example, if you take off an entire week and you work an 8-hour event, you can be paid up to 8 hours for overtime. If you work a 16-hour event in a week where you're taking off the entire week, you're going to be paid only for 8 hours and not the full 16 hours.
Thank you, Tommy. I think, as you said, I certainly think those adjustments were reasonable in terms of, first, in terms of the pandemic, and you encountered, I think we were very fortunate at the township that we didn't have a mass outbreak that we had to contend with, but certainly there were a lot of strains put on a lot of people and a lot of scenarios that they had not anticipated, and giving the staff a little additional ability to bank some days, I think is good policy and makes sense. And then the other, while it is a change, it felt more like it was just sort of closing up, some of these unintended scenarios where somebody might wind up with a couple of days working during a week they were taking off, and just sort of cleaning up, kind of how that overtime structure would be, again, seemed to make sense, in terms of just procedurally how that should be handled. So I certainly am fine with those changes. Do either of the two other board members have any specific questions regarding the changes or any comments they want to make on that?
No, I think it's well thought out, Rick. I think it's especially with the COVID situation, I think it's a good plan going forward.
I agree, Rick. Everything you said, it's been a crazy year, so I think this is the best this is what we can do.
Fair enough. Then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, Resolution 2021-07, to amend the Worcester Township Personnel Manual as presented.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor?
There is none.
Okay, seeing none, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. So next item on our agenda is other business. I would just like to sort of make a generic comment. We worked through those fairly quickly. There weren't, again, it's a lot of procedural items in a meeting like this, but Steve, you had kind of commented on the emergency services item, and I would sort of echo that, and then sort of add an additional sort of comment on top of that, is that every year we've certainly seen Tommy and the staff review all these items, so that by the time they get to us in the form of our reorganization meeting, they're reviewing who serves in what roles and where there potentially are opportunities to make changes or adjustments. And in years past, there have certainly been decisions that have been made that have economically benefited the township. And so ultimately, our job again is easier when they've done a significant amount of vetting before things get to us, and we get those updates every week from the township in terms of, by the time it gets to this resolution, this information has been presented to us oftentimes multiple times until it gets to the finished product. So it certainly, I appreciate, makes our job a little bit easier, but certainly we're not just rubber stamping each year these reappointments. There's certainly a process of going through, making sure the individuals want to continue to serve in those roles that they have, and then the opportunity to reappointment individuals is also nice when people have done a good job in the past and they want to continue to do that going forward. So do either of you have any other business you want to bring before the board tonight?
Rick, a couple of items. The
Sure.
First item would be, I guess we're somewhat confined by the COVID problems, but I guess review of the manager, and you would say, well, we just approved the pay raise, but that's really going forward. And I think we need some kind of plan of action where the review of the manager, so we could schedule that sometime somewhere in the future. I know it's come up before by residents. How do you guys sit there and do that? But if we could just schedule something there, a review process, so we're all on the same page going forward as to the duties of the manager and where we're at with that.
Sure.
I think people question that sometimes. So that's, we can schedule something, that would be good. The second item is, I think Mr. Betts brought up about a bridge in Worcester that created a problem. I know it's been an issue we brought up, and maybe to revisit that would be the Kriebel Mill Road Bridge. There's been some, I guess, input from some residents over there wanting the road to be repaved. There's some tree work there, some issues with the township road. So maybe that's something we could schedule for a future meeting to discuss that bridge and any kind of expenses that would be done to the roads over there if it's not really being used by the public. And road repairs are an issue. And I guess it comes down to, as we said, the fire apparatus using the bridge or that area. It really becomes a long driveway for the vehicles going one way. So maybe in the future we can look at that to see where we're at with that bridge. That's it. Thank you.
I would
Sounds good.
agree with what Steve just said. I think it's important that that bridge even be looked at as far as just the 40-foot school buses, fire trucks, trash trucks that have to go, turn around. Instead of having a flow-through road, I think we ought to at least look at it and bring attention to the residents in the area if they have to have any intent to repair the bridge and clean the trees that are overgrown. If you ever went down that way, you'd see what I mean. It's old and it's ugly, in need of maintenance. How's that?
Fair enough. I think that's certainly a fine topic for either a work session or an agenda item in a future meeting. And certainly I'm sure that we can get that onto the docket. I don't see any issue with that at all. So we typically take public comment at the end of the meeting as well. I noticed our agenda actually doesn't have public comment, but since we came well under the 3.5-hour meeting that I chaired last January, in terms of that, certainly I'm willing, if there's anybody who is in attendance tonight that wishes to make any public comment at this point on the back end of the meeting, certainly I would be willing to allow that as well.
I'm not seeing any.
Okay. Fair enough. Then I will say motion to adjourn.
Second that.
Yep.
So moved. We are adjourned. Guys, thank you as always for your time. Tommy, appreciate everything the township does, and we are adjourned.
Right. Good night.